Hi, this is Mark Stewart. Welcome back to my continuing series on the long-term effects of bullying and how you and others who are affected by the bullying can find hope and healing. This is part of the promotion for my new book, Names Will Hurt Me, Healing for Victims of Bullying. I can only hit the highlights in these videos. I can't really hit all of it. But I guarantee you it will get you started. There's going to be something here that you can get out of this. And we've turned the corner into the healing section. Now we're just getting started. There's a lot to it. In fact, this has to do with the idea of reprogramming your GPS, and I had to break this one into two sections, and I still couldn't hit everything that I had in that chapter. But I do want to talk about it because I really want you to have an understanding, at least the overview of what it means, okay? Your mind is really like a GPS. A GPS doesn't just magically pull out of thin air where to tell you to turn. Somebody programmed into that little machine all the maps. Now, it may upload new maps, but still, the maps are there. And they pre-programmed a set of instructions. Often they're called an algorithm on how to choose from where you're at now to where you're going and the best route to get you there. The fastest route normally. But maybe you wanted the scenic route. You can actually sometimes change your programming in GPS to take you to the scenic route. See, it's the past programming that determines what turns you make, not just where you're at now and where you're going. It decides the turns to get there. And guess what? Your mind works a lot the same way. You are in a situation right now. Let's say you're talking to somebody and there's a minor confrontation. You may think that you reacted to that person based on what they said to you. I'm sorry to tell you, but that's not the way it works. See, your mind takes that situation and it combines it with all the stuff you've done and experienced before in your life, and in a fraction of a second combines that with your current experience, meshes them together, and then decides on this is what you need to do. Doesn't that sound a lot like a GPS? Well, guess what? You can reprogram a GPS and the algorithm or the steps that it uses to determine the route. And you can reprogram your mind. And you can get a better life out of it. So let's look at it a little bit. Let's talk about jungle and driving me crazy. Okay, these are a couple examples that are going to illustrate what I'm talking about. The first is jungle. Let's say that you're walking in a jungle. And as you're walking, you hear a rustling in the leaves and you look back. It's natural. Everybody looks back whenever you hear a rustling in the leaves. You expect to see a mouse or maybe a squirrel, something like that. But this time you look back and there's a tiger. Now what happens? Your mind shuts parts of the conscious mind down because it goes into fight or flight mode. And you run for everything you've got. And let's say that you somehow manage to get away from this tiger. But you get away, and by the time you get away, you're out of breath. Your mind is racing, but it's racing in a weird way. Time seems to stand still. But guess what? There was a big emotional impact. And the more emotion that is connected with an event, the more it programs that mind. So the next time you go for a walk and you hear rustling in the leaves, you immediately look back and you expect to see a tiger. Because your mind just says rustling in the leaves equals tiger. But let's say this time you look back and you start to want to run because your body wants to go into that fight or flight mode, but you on a conscious level just fight that. And you decide, no, I'm going to look, and it's a squirrel. Now, a part of you is going to feel silly because you almost ran away from a squirrel. But you have to realize that the event that you experienced and the emotional trauma that went with it caused your mind to instantly connect rustling the leaves, tiger. And it's going to take a long time. Maybe the next time you go for a walk, you hear rustling the leaves. You start to turn, but you're able to fight it off a little more and you're a little more slow about it. And then the next time, maybe a little slower. over time it can get to the point that you no longer automatically equate that rustling the leaves with a tiger, but it takes time. Now I'm going to give you a very real experience and a very real example. Driving me crazy. My mother's probably not going to be happy that I put this in here, but she drove me crazy. Still does sometimes, but at the time it was really bad. I was 16 when she was involved in a really bad accident. A guy ran out of a school zone driving more than 50 miles an hour and T-boned the pickup truck that my mom was driving. The pickup tipped over on its side and then bounced back up before it hit a telephone pole. Now, when it bounced down, my mom's arm had gone out the window. She had her window down. And the truck bounced on her arm and crushed it. She spent over 2 months in the hospital and almost had her arm amputated at a couple different times, but they managed to save it. When she came out of the hospital, they had taken a piece of bone out of her hip and they had rebuilt this bone, so she had this huge metal thing sticking out of her arm with all these clamps and screws holding it all in place. She couldn't drive. And I'm 16 and I'm nervous enough as a new driver, and she's over in the passenger side and it's Christmas time and people are driving kind of crazy, and every time somebody would come out of a side road just too fast, like they might not stop, my mom would literally scream. And every time she would scream, I would almost run off the road because I'm doing this because I'm nervous anyway. I can't tell you how many accidents we came close to being in because she overreacted to somebody coming from a side road. It took a long time, but eventually she was able to stop overreacting to someone coming from a side road, but it took a long time. The more emotional impact that comes with an event, the more it imprints on your mind and makes an association. But you can begin to change those associations. You can begin to change your thoughts. See, when you are living in a victim mode, you associate everything with being a victim. You associate everything with the bullying, the trauma, and it hurts you. In fact, there's something called rumination. When you ruminate, you are thinking over and over or meditating or chewing on a thought. Okay, that's the idea. It's like meditating or thinking, chewing on it over and over and over again. And that's what happens. You ruminate about the negatives. You think about it. You replay that video in your head of all the negative events and all the feelings and the emotions over and over and over and over again. And then you combine it with negative things that happen to you now, and your outlook on life goes down and down and down and down. It doesn't have to stay there. You can change that. But it takes time. It's not easy. There are steps that you can use to reprogram that GPS and begin to react to situations differently and have a better life. Now I'm going to pick up a piece of paper. I don't normally read during these videos, but I'm going to read something to you because I don't want to get it wrong. I want it right. But it's very profound. You might have heard it before. It was written by Frank Outlaw in 1977. And here it is. Watch your thoughts. They become your words. Watch your words. They become your actions. Watch your actions. They become your habits. Watch your habits. They become character. Watch your character, for it becomes your destiny. See, what you think about eventually is going to come out in your words. And then that's going to affect how people react to you. And that's going to affect how you act. And that's eventually going to affect your character and eventually going to affect where you go in life. You don't have to stay there. Okay? First, admit that the past experiences affected you. You didn't live in a bubble. What happened to you in your past has affected you in one way or another. It has affected your life. Don't run from it anymore. Admit it. Monitor your thoughts. Now, you have a dialogue going on in your head constantly. Thoughts race through your mind in a flash. And you have a conversation. You hear your own voice. Hopefully you don't hear other voices. If you hear a bunch of other voices, you probably need to talk to somebody a whole lot more qualified than me. But you do hear your own voice. Everybody does. And you even talk to yourself. When you're alone, you actually probably talk to yourself. You might even answer yourself. We all do it. But there is a constant dialogue going on. Now, monitoring doesn't mean that you have to think about every thought, because that would just drive you up the wall, but you can just listen to the overall tone. Is it negative? Did you have a failure at a job and get laid off and you're like, oh man, I'll never get another job, I failed again? That's that negative thought. Okay, that's that negative trend. Maybe you broke up with a romantic partner, or they dumped you and you're like, I'll never find anyone else because that was another failure and nobody's going to love me. Going down that road and ruminating on the past, combining it with the negative from the present, that is a horrible place to be. Don't stay there. Now, you can't be happy and positive all the time. That's not realistic. But you can be more positive in general. And you don't have to stay negative. Yeah, when bad things happen, you're going to have negative thoughts and you're going to struggle. Don't beat yourself up. Be patient with yourself. There's going to be times you get laid off. It's going to hurt. You've been dating someone or married and you end up in a divorce. That hurts. I've been through that. That's painful. But you can recover from it. You don't have to stay there. You don't have to grow bitter. Begin to monitor those thoughts, and when you realize they're negative, you've got to do something about it. But what can you do about it? Well, I'm not going to be able to cover all of it in this video. I'm going to hit the rest of it in the next video. But let's look at a couple things. First of all, move. Physically, change your circumstances. Have you ever noticed that you struggle more with this when you are sitting by yourself than you do when you're with others? Yeah, you might struggle with it sometimes when you're with other people, but it's more of a struggle, much more of a struggle when you're by yourself. One of the worst things you can do is sit in front of a TV, being a couch potato, eating bad things, because what happens then? Number one, you're wasting time in front of the TV, which there's nothing wrong with it. I love movies. I'm a movie person. I love watching movies. There's nothing wrong with doing that occasionally, but if that's what you do with every minute of your free time, or the majority of your free time, you're wasting time. You could be accomplishing something in life. And when you watch TV, it's proven that you eat more. You want to snack all the time. And then you gain weight, and then you feel bad because you gained weight, and you feel bad because you haven't accomplished anything, and it just keeps heaping more and more and more of this negative on you. So the first thing to do is to get up off that chair, get up off that couch, and move. Now, I'm not saying you have to go run a marathon, but just get up and move. Go for a walk. Maybe go exercise. Go to the mall. Go walking around the mall where there's other people. Maybe go to a restaurant. One of my favorite things to do is go to Panera Bread, because I can get a bagel and just sit there, or get something like a hot chocolate. And I can sit there and I kind of watch people. I like watching people, listening to them, and just, it's kind of neat to be around other people and just kind of hear their stories, even when I'm by myself. I've gone to Barnes & Noble before, to the bookstore. Didn't buy a book. Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. But a lot of times I was like, I wonder what's out there. Having to do with photography, Photoshop, stuff I love. And I would be reading a new book, but it physically made me get up out of my chair. It made me get out of my house. I had to go be where other people were, and even if I wasn't feeling extremely social, I still had to speak to somebody to maybe order a hot chocolate or get something to munch on while I looked at some magazines or some books. It required me to be around other people. That's one of the first things you can do to change that negative thought period and that rumination. Okay? The other one is flow. Now, there's several more that I'm going to cover in the next video. These are just beginning to touch on ways to get out of that negative mindset. But this is a big one. What is it that when you do it, you completely lose track of time? For me, there's a couple of examples. One is photography. I can go take pictures and I lose track of time. Recently, we had a really foggy morning, and Tina and I went for a walk around the lake that's close by, and it was beautiful. And I spent several hours taking pictures before the fog lifted, and I loved every minute of it. I didn't realize the time was going by. Tennis. When I play tennis, I can spend 2 to 3 hours playing tennis. And I'm exhausted, but I love every second of it. And I completely lose track of time. And Photoshop. I can be working on pictures in Photoshop, and I completely lose track of time. That idea of being in the zone is also known psychologically. Psychologists call it flow. A flow experience is one that you are challenged. Okay, that's one of the first things. It has to be challenging. It has to engage you. And it has to be something you enjoy to the point that you lose track of time. Those are flow experiences. Whatever it is that you are into, to the point that you lose track of time, get up and go do it. When you do that, instead of having a negative mindset, you have a positive memory, and you can't be doing something positive and thinking negative at the same time. It doesn't work. Your mind can't really do two things at once. Now, there's a lot more I want to talk about, but I've got to split this into more than one video. It's just too long. I'm already getting close to the 20-minute maximum for this camera as it is. So hang in there. Begin to work on some of these. Begin to monitor your thoughts. Start moving away. Start physically changing your circumstances. As Tony Robbins has said many times, feelings follow actions. When you struggle with negative feelings, change your circumstances, move. When you change your circumstances, when you move, your feelings will change with it. You can either let your feelings dictate your actions, or you can make your actions dictate your feelings. I prefer to do something and then let my feelings change. You can do that. And find those flow experiences. Again, this is only a couple out of, I think, 6 different methods that I'm going to be talking about to begin to change this thought pattern. The cool thing is, as you change this thought pattern, the first few times it's going to feel almost fake and it's going to be hard to do. But then it gets easier and easier and easier. And over time, the way you think and the way that programming is changes. And you look at life through a much different filter. Now, there's a whole lot more I'm going to talk about. There's roadblocks, there's rest stops, there's a lot of different techniques. But it all starts right here. Begin to work on this, and you'll begin to change your life. Thank you.